On Christmas night, my daughter refused to let me attend. She said, "You don't fit this party, Mom. Don't come. You're just a burden." I looked at my bank account, the money I had transferred to her over the past 18 months, and now I wasn't suitable enough. A burden. I had been silent for years. But that night, what she didn't expect was that I pressed a single button on the screen. One touch that would completely change her life forever. Thank you for staying with me. Before we go on, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? Your presence here matters. Also, a gentle reminder, this story blends real-life inspiration with fictional details for entertainment and learning purposes. Any resemblance to actual names or locations is coincidental. My hope is that it sparks reflection in your own life. The message arrived just after 9 o'clock on a cold December evening. I was getting ready for bed when my phone lit up on the nightstand. I reached for it, expecting a goodnight text from one of my grandsons. Instead, I saw Victoria's name. My daughter, finally. I opened the message. "Mom, I've been thinking about the holidays, and I need to be honest with you. The Christmas gathering at our house this year is going to be more formal than usual. Nathaniel has some important business associates attending, and we're trying to make the right impression. I don't think it's a good fit for you to be there. You don't really fit with the crowd we're inviting, and honestly, it would just be awkward. I hope you understand. Also, I need you to stop being so negative all the time. It's exhausting. You're a burden, Mom. I can't keep managing your emotions on top of everything else. Please don't come. Victoria." I read it twice, then a third time. The words didn't change. "You don't fit. You're a burden. Don't come." My hands were shaking. I set the phone down on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling, my chest tight. My daughter, the one I'd raised alone after Richard died, the one I'd supported through every failure and dream, had just uninvited me from Christmas. In writing, with clinical precision. I picked up the phone again and scrolled back through our messages. Months of one-sided conversation. Me asking about the boys. Me checking in. Me offering help. Her replies, when they came at all, were short. Transactional. "Can you transfer money for tuition? The mortgage is due. Nathaniel needs funds for a business trip." I sat there in the dark, staring at my phone, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Then I did what I should have done months ago. I opened my bank account. The screen glowed cold blue as I navigated to the recurring payments tab. The list appeared neat, automatic, clinical. 18 months of transfers I'd set up so I wouldn't have to think about them every month. Transfer to Victoria Mercer, $6,500. Mortgage payment. Transfer to St. Jude's Academy, $3,200. Tuition, Oliver and Theodore. Transfer to Luxury Auto Lease, $850. Mercedes G-Wagon. Transfer to Pinehurst Country Club, $1,200. Annual membership. Transfer to Grocery Delivery Service, $500. Monthly. My hand froze on the mouse. I kept scrolling: furniture, clothes, ski trips, spa treatments, birthday parties I wasn't invited to. I clicked open the summary tab. The software did the math I'd been too afraid to do myself. Total transfers, last 18 months, $185,000. $185,000. An average of over $10,000 every single month. For a year and a half. My daughter, who'd just called me a burden, had been living entirely off me. I thought about Richard, my husband. He'd passed away 10 years ago, leaving me $2.3 million in savings and insurance. "Enough for the rest of your life," he'd said. "Enough to help Victoria when she needs it." 8 years ago, I'd given her $200,000 for a business venture that never materialized. She'd burned through it in 18 months, and I'd let it go. Told myself she was young, that she'd learn. But she hadn't learned. She'd just gotten better at taking. I stared at the screen, at the rows of transfers, at the evidence of my own foolishness. Then I saw it. A button at the bottom of each line, cancel recurring payment. My cursor hovered over the first one. My hand shook. I thought about the message still glowing on my phone. "You're a burden. Don't come." I thought about Richard, about what he would say if he could see this. I thought about my grandsons, Oliver and Theodore, growing up in a house built on lies and money that wasn't earned. I had been silent for years, but that night something inside me broke. Or maybe it finally healed. I clicked. Victoria Mercer, mortgage payment canceled. Then the next. St. Jude's Academy, tuition canceled. Luxury auto lease canceled. Pinehurst Country Club canceled. Grocery delivery canceled. Each click felt like cutting a rope I'd been clinging to for too long. When I reached the end of the list, I sat back and stared at the screen. Total monthly transfers canceled $16,600. The screen asked me to confirm. I clicked yes. The page refreshed. The transfers disappeared. It was done. I closed the laptop. The room fell into darkness. I sat there, my hands folded in my lap, listening to the silence. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if I had the strength to see it through. But for the first time in 18 months, I felt something other than exhaustion. I felt power. And there was no going back. The morning of December 11th, I woke to silence. Not the peaceful kind. The hollow kind that settles in when you're waiting for something that never comes. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. No messages. No missed calls. I scrolled through my notifications, a pharmacy reminder, a news alert spam about holiday sales. Nothing from Victoria. It was my 63rd birthday. I set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. Maybe she'd forgotten. Maybe she was busy with the boys. I spent the morning trying to convince myself it didn't matter. By afternoon, I'd almost succeeded. Then my phone buzzed. A text from a former colleague I hadn't spoken to in months. "Eleanor, is everything okay? Saw your daughter's blog post. Wanted to check in." My stomach dropped. I clicked the link. The page loaded slowly. Victoria appeared in a cream cashmere sweater, hands wrapped around a mug of tea, gazing peacefully out a window. Soft lighting, perfect hair. The title appeared beneath it in elegant script. Letting go of toxic energy. Why I'm choosing peace this holiday season. I stopped breathing. I scrolled down my hand, trembling. "This year I'm learning something important," Victoria had written. "Not everyone who loves you is good for you. Some people drain your light without even realizing it. They bring negativity, judgment, and exhaustion into your space, and during the holidays, that weight becomes unbearable." I kept reading. Even family can be toxic, especially family, because we feel obligated to keep them close even when they harm our peace. But I'm done with obligation. This Christmas, I'm protecting my peace and my children's future. My vision blurred. I scrolled to the comments. There were over 100. "You're so brave for sharing this. Family doesn't get a free pass. Proud of you." "Is this about your mom? Good for you setting boundaries." Each comment felt like a slap. These strangers, people who knew nothing about me, about what I'd done for Victoria, were cheering her on my birthday. My hands were shaking. I hit the call button before I could think better of it. Victoria answered on the third ring. "Mom." Her voice was flat, like she'd been expecting this. "What is that post, Victoria?" A pause. Then calm as ever. "It's my truth, Mom." "Your truth." My voice cracked. "You wrote a public article calling me toxic. On my birthday." "Oh." She sounded genuinely surprised. "Is it your birthday? I forgot." The words hit harder than anything she'd written. "You forgot," I repeated. "Look, Mom, I don't have time for this. You're always so negative, always playing the victim. I needed to set boundaries, and yes, I shared my journey. That's what my platform is for." "Victoria, I've been supporting you for 18 months. And there it is." She cut me off. "You can't do anything without throwing it in my face. Maybe it's time to let go. Stop trying to control my life with your money." "I never tried to control. I have to go. Nathaniel and I have a dinner reservation." The line went dead. I sat there, phone in my lap, staring at nothing. Outside, the December sky had gone dark. I opened the blog post again, scrolled through the comments one more time. Each one felt like a stranger, mocking me, pitying me, without knowing the first thing about what I'd sacrificed. My daughter had taken my generosity, twisted it into abuse, and shared it with the world. On my birthday, I closed the browser, set my phone face down on the table. But I couldn't delete what I'd seen. The words kept looping in my head. Toxic, negative, let go. I sat in the growing darkness and let the humiliation settle over me like a weight. 63 years old, and my daughter had just told the world I wasn't worth keeping. 3 days after my birthday, the pain came. I'd spent those days trying to convince myself I was fine, that Victoria's blog post didn't matter. I forced myself to eat, though nothing tasted right. I tried to sleep, but the words kept looping. Toxic, negative, let go. By the evening of December 14th, my chest felt tight, like someone had wrapped a band around my ribs and was slowly pulling it tighter. I told myself it was stress, anxiety. But when the tightness turned to sharp, crushing pain that radiated down my left arm, I knew. I grabbed my purse and drove myself to the emergency room. The lights were too bright. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee. I gave my name to the desk clerk, pressed a hand to my chest, and tried to keep my voice steady when I explained the pain. They took me back immediately. The doctor, a tired-looking man in his 40s, ran an EKG. Eventually, he pulled up a stool and looked at me with the kind of calm that made my stomach drop. "You're experiencing cardiac arrhythmia," he said. "An irregular heartbeat. It's likely stress-induced, but we need to monitor you overnight." I nodded. My hands were shaking. "Is there someone we can call?" he asked. I swallowed. "I'll text my daughter." I pulled out my phone and typed with trembling fingers. "At the hospital. Heart issue. Can you come?" I hit send and stared at the screen. The message showed as delivered, then a moment later read. I waited. An hour passed. The monitors beeped steadily. Another hour. I watched the door, listened for footsteps. Every time someone passed, my heart would jump only to sink again when they kept walking. At some point, the nurse returned. She glanced at the empty chair beside my bed. "Is someone coming to pick you up tomorrow?" she asked gently. I forced a smile. "My daughter, she's on her way." The lie tasted bitter. I spent the night alone in that narrow hospital bed, the monitors beeping in the dark, my phone face up on the tray beside me. Silent. By morning, my heartbeat had stabilized. The doctor told me I could go home but needed supervision for 24 to 48 hours. I checked my phone one last time. Still nothing from Victoria. I pulled up a rideshare app and requested an Uber. When I got home, I unlocked the door and stepped into the silence. I peeled off my coat, changed into old sweatpants, and sank onto the couch. Somewhere in the house, my phone buzzed. Once. Twice. I finally reached for it. The screen glowed with a new blog post notification. Victoria Mercer Self-Care Sunday. Sometimes you have to choose you. My stomach dropped. I clicked the link. Victoria appeared draped across a plush massage table in a white spa robe, her face glowing. "Taking time for me today. Feeling so grateful." I scrolled down. The photo metadata was visible December 15th, 2:00 p.m. 2:00, yesterday afternoon. While I'd been sitting in that hospital bed, my daughter had been at a luxury spa. Through the window in the photo, I could see her Mercedes G-Wagon, the one I paid for every month. I kept scrolling. A shot of the spa's menu renewal package for $450. My hands were shaking. I hit the call button. She answered on the fourth ring. "What, Mom? Where were you yesterday?" A pause. "What do you mean?" "I was in the hospital, Victoria. I texted you." "Oh, right. I saw that." "You saw it?" "Yeah, but I figured you were fine. You always overreact, Mom. It was probably just stress." I couldn't breathe. "It was cardiac arrhythmia. And you're fine now, right?" She interrupted. "I had a really important self-care appointment yesterday. Can I at least talk to the boys?" Another pause. "I don't think that's a good idea. You might be contagious or something." "Contagious." My voice cracked. "Victoria, it was a heart issue." In the background, I heard a small voice. "Mommy, can we call Grandma?" "Oliver." My breath caught. Victoria's voice turned sugary sweet. "Not now, honey. Grandma's sick. We need to let her rest okay." "But I want to—" "Oliver," I said no. "Go play with your brother." The phone shifted. Victoria's voice came back cold. "I have to go." The line went dead. I sat there, phone in my lap, staring at nothing. She'd lied to them. Told Oliver and Theodore I was sick, contagious, so they'd be afraid to see me. She'd turned me into a threat. The tears came. Silent, hot, streaming down my face. But beneath the grief, beneath the exhaustion, something else was stirring. Something harder. I wiped my face and stared at the blog post still glowing on my screen. Victoria smiling in her spa robe, radiating peace, while I'd been lying in a hospital bed, wondering if anyone cared whether I lived or died. I set the phone down carefully, and for the first time since this all began, I felt something other than pain. I felt clarity. I didn't sleep that night. By dawn on December 16th, I was already sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. I kept checking my phone, half expecting Victoria to call, to text, to realize what I'd done and come demanding answers. But the screen stayed dark, silent. She didn't know yet. I opened my laptop and pulled up my bank account one more time. The canceled payment stared back at me, stark and undeniable. Total monthly transfers canceled $16,600. It was real. I'd actually done it. My hands were shaking as I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts. I needed help. I needed someone who could tell me if I just made the biggest mistake of my life or the smartest decision. I found the name I was looking for, Sarah Brennan. I'd met Sarah 5 years ago at a financial planning seminar back when I was still consulting. She was sharp, practical, no-nonsense, one of the few people I trusted completely. We'd kept in touch through holiday cards and occasional lunches. I hadn't expected to need her like this. She answered on the second ring. "Eleanor, it's been a while." "Sarah." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I need your help." There was a pause, and then her tone shifted, professional, focused. "Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about the $185,000 I'd transferred over 18 months, about Victoria uninviting me from Christmas because I didn't fit the image, about the message calling me a burden, about canceling every payment in the middle of the night. By the time I finished, my throat was tight. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Eleanor, you need to document everything. Every email, every text message, every bank statement, screenshots of that uninvite message. I want it all saved in one place." "Why?" "Because when Victoria realizes you've cut her off, she's going to react. I don't know how, but people who've built their entire lives on $16,000 a month don't take it well when it disappears. You need to be ready." My stomach twisted. "What should I do?" "Save everything in a folder. Label it clearly. Back it up computer external drive cloud. If she threatens you, if she tries to manipulate the situation, if she does anything, document it and call me immediately. Understood?" "Understood." "Good. And Eleanor." Her voice softened slightly. "You're doing the right thing." I wasn't sure I believed her, but I thanked her anyway. After we hung up, I spent the rest of the morning compiling the folder. Bank statements showing every transfer, the uninvite message, email threads where Victoria had asked for money, screenshots I'd taken months ago of her blog posts, pictures of expensive vacations, designer clothes, luxury spa days. I labeled the folder Evidence and saved copies to my computer, an external hard drive, and the cloud. By afternoon, my eyes were burning, but I wasn't done. I pulled out a piece of cream-colored stationery from the drawer and picked up a pen. "Dear Oliver and Theodore, I want you to know that I love you both very much. No matter what anyone tells you, that will never change. I will always be here for you. Always. Love, Grandma." I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into an envelope. I didn't seal it. I wasn't ready to send it yet, but I needed them to know. I sat back in my chair and stared at the folder on my screen, at the letter on the table, at the phone beside me still silent. Victoria didn't know yet, but she would soon. And when she did, I would be ready. 2 days later, on the morning of December 18th, I woke to an email that made my stomach drop. Subject: Fraud Alert. Unusual activity detected on your account. The message was clinical. A new credit card has been opened in your name. Credit limit $30,000. If you did not authorize this activity, contact us immediately. I grabbed my phone and dialed the bank's fraud hotline with shaking hands. The representative was polite but detached. She pulled up my account and walked me through the details in a flat voice. The card was opened on December 17th. There have been 3 transactions, $12,000 at Nordstrom, $8,000 at an Apple store, and a $25,000 wire transfer to an external account. I couldn't breathe. $45,000. "Yes, ma'am, the billing address on file is..." She read it off. "Victoria's address. I need to freeze my credit right now." "Of course. You'll also need to contact local law enforcement and file a police report." I hung up and sat there trying to process it. My daughter had stolen my identity. 20 minutes later, I was on the phone with the police. They transferred me to a detective. "This is Detective Martinez. Walk me through what happened." I explained everything: the email, the fraudulent card, the transactions, Victoria's address. I'll need copies of everything, he said. Bank statements, the fraud alert, any communication with the person you suspect. Can you come to the station this afternoon? Yes. And ma'am, if the billing address matches your daughter's residence and the signature was forged, this is identity theft. That's a serious federal offense. I swallowed hard. I understand. After we hung up, I sat in the kitchen and stared at my phone. Sarah had told me days ago, in this state, you only need one party's consent to record a call. As long as you're part of the conversation, it's legal. I opened my phone's voice recorder app. Then I dialed Victoria's number. She answered on the fourth ring. What, Mom? Did you open a credit card in my name? Silence. Then, so you found out? My heart was pounding. Victoria, did you forge my signature and open a credit card in my name? Oh, don't act so shocked. You owe me, Mom. You ruined my life by cutting me off. I'm just taking what's mine. What's yours? My voice cracked. Victoria, that's identity theft. That's a federal crime. She laughed, sharp, bitter. Go ahead, call the cops. No one will believe you. They'll think you're just a vindictive old woman. I already called them. The line went quiet. When she spoke again, her voice was tight with rage. You're going to regret this. The call ended. I sat there staring at the recording icon. 47 seconds. I saved the file, labeled it with the date and time, and sent copies to Detective Martinez and Sarah. Sarah's reply came within minutes. That's a confession. Forward it to the detective immediately. Detective Martinez responded an hour later. Received. This is enough to open a formal investigation. I set my phone down and pressed my hands over my face. My daughter had committed a federal crime. She'd stolen $45,000, forged my signature, and threatened me. And somewhere beneath the shock and the fear, I felt something else. Relief. Because now there was no question, no gray area, no room for guilt. Victoria had crossed a line I couldn't ignore. I sat in the quiet kitchen, my hands folded. My daughter was a criminal, and I had the proof. 2 days after I filed the police report on the morning of December 20th, I woke to find my phone glowing with notifications. 4 new voicemails from blocked number. I knew who it was. I'd blocked Victoria's number, but voicemails still came through. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and hit play. Message 1, December 19:04 a.m. Victoria's voice came through breathless, confused. Mom, the mortgage payment bounced. The bank just called. This has to be a mistake, right? Just call me back. I took a sip of coffee and pressed next. Message 2, December 19:17 p.m. Her voice was tighter now, edged with frustration. The school called. Tuition is overdue for Oliver and Theodore. Mom, this isn't funny. You need to call me back. Now. Message 3, December 19:43 p.m. Now she was angry. Words came fast, sharp. You're destroying my family. Nathaniel is furious. The car company called about the lease. The club sent a notice. Fix this, Mom. Muffled sounds in the background, Nathaniel's voice raised and distant. Message 4, December 28:22 team. This time her voice was cold, controlled, dangerous. I know about the credit card investigation. Nice try. You're bluffing. You won't press charges against your own daughter. And if you do, I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. A vindictive old woman. So go ahead. Do your worst. The line went dead. I sat there staring at the phone. I pictured Victoria opening the bank letter. Payment returned. Insufficient funds. Her hands shaking as she dialed the mortgage company, the school, the car lease office. The small embarrassed smile when her membership card was declined at the country club. There must be some mistake. I forwarded all 4 voicemails to Sarah with a single line: she's escalating. Her reply came a minute later. Good. Let her show everyone who she really is. Save everything. I deleted the voicemails and carried my coffee to the window. For the first time in days, I felt light. Victoria was destroying herself. That afternoon, I opened my laptop to find an email from the HOA. Subject urgent, concern for resident welfare. My stomach dropped. We have received communication from a concerned family member regarding your well-being. Adult Protective Services has been notified and may contact you. I scrolled down and found Victoria's email forwarded to the HOA board and CC'd to at least a dozen neighbors. I'm writing with deep concern about my mother, Eleanor Whitmore. Over the past weeks, I have noticed significant changes in her behavior and judgment. She is refusing necessary medical care, making irrational financial decisions, and has become increasingly hostile. I fear for her safety and believe she may need assistance. I read it twice, my hands shaking with anger. She was trying to have me declared incompetent. The next morning, December 21st, there was a knock at my door. The woman on my porch held up an ID badge. Ms. Whitmore, I'm from Adult Protective Services. We received a concern report. May I come in? I opened the door. Of course. She was in her 50s, calm and professional, carrying a clipboard. I led her to the living room. The report mentioned concerns about your health and decision-making. Can you tell me about recent medical care? I retrieved the folder I'd been keeping. I was hospitalized December 14th for cardiac arrhythmia. I handed her the discharge papers. As you can see, I was cleared the next day. My heart is stable. No cognitive issues noted. She reviewed the documents carefully. And your finances? I handed her bank statements. I manage $2.3 million in savings and investments. Everything is organized and current. I recently stopped financial support to my adult daughter, a deliberate decision, not irrational. Her eyebrows rose slightly. There's more. I pulled out my phone and played Victoria's recorded confession, the call where she admitted opening a credit card in my name. This is my daughter admitting to identity theft, I said quietly. I filed a police report 4 days ago. The caseworker listened to the entire recording. When it finished, she set down her pen. Ms. Whitmore, you are clearly fully competent. This appears to be a false report, likely filed in retaliation. I'll note there is no cause for concern and that this complaint seems defamatory. Relief washed through me. Thank you. After she left, I sat on the couch and closed my eyes. My phone buzzed. Enjoy your little victory. I'm not done. Victoria. I stared at the message, then took a screenshot and saved it to my evidence folder. I called Sarah. She filed a false APS report, I said. Sent an email to my entire neighborhood claiming I have cognitive decline. Sarah was quiet for a moment. That's harassment, defamation. Did you document it? Everything. The emails, the APS, visit her threat after. Good. This is more evidence, Eleanor. We can use this in court if needed. Keep saving everything. She's building your case for you. I hung up and opened the evidence folder on my computer. It was thick now, bank records, voicemails, emails, police reports, medical documents, recordings. Every attack Victoria launched gave me more proof. I looked out the window at the gray December afternoon. I was exhausted. But I wasn't backing down. That evening, just as the December sky faded to full dark, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. For a moment, I considered not answering, but something made me walk to the door. The woman on my porch was in her early 70s, impeccably dressed in a charcoal wool coat, silver hair pinned neatly back. She carried a thick leather folder. Ms. Whitmore, she said. I'm Caroline Ashford, Nathaniel's mother. We need to talk. I blinked. Mrs. Ashford, may I come in? I led her to the living room. She set the folder on the coffee table and sat with the posture of someone accustomed to being taken seriously. I'll be direct, she said. I know what Victoria has been doing to you, and I know what my son has become because of her. I sat across from her waiting. Caroline opened the folder and pulled out documents. 5 years ago, Nathaniel filed for bankruptcy. He owed $400,000, mostly gambling debts he'd hidden from me. I paid it off. All of it. He swore he'd never gamble again. She handed me the bankruptcy filing, but he didn't stop. He just got better at hiding it. Last month, I hired a forensic accountant. Nathaniel currently owes $2.1 million, most of it to private lenders. I stared at the bank statements, page after page of withdrawals, transfers, cash advances. Victoria knows, Caroline said flatly. She's been covering for him, lying to investors, funneling money through fake accounts. And 5 years ago, before she married my son, she ran a charity fraud scheme, raised $30,000 for a children's cancer fund that never existed. The case was settled quietly. Her family paid restitution. She handed me a yellowed police report. I felt sick. Why are you telling me this? Caroline's expression softened slightly. Because my grandsons are growing up in a house built on lies and debt. Because Victoria has turned my son into a criminal. And because you're the only person who's had the courage to stand up to her. I looked at the documents spread across the table. What do you want from me? I want to help you, Caroline said. And I want custody of Oliver and Theodore. I met her gaze. I've been watching this unfold for months, she continued. I know about the blog posts, the hospital, the credit card fraud, the APS report. She's escalating. And in 3 days, she's hosting a Christmas gala, Nathaniel's last desperate attempt to convince investors he's solvent. I wasn't invited. I know, but I am, and I think you should come with me. Why? Because those investors deserve to know who they're dealing with. And because it's time Victoria faced consequences in front of the people whose opinions she values most. A slow realization dawned. You want to expose them, publicly. I want to protect my grandsons, Caroline corrected. Everything else is just a means to that end. After the gala, I'll file for emergency temporary custody. I have evidence of financial instability, fraud, and an unsafe home. But it will be stronger if you continue pressing charges for identity theft. I sat back. You've thought this through. I've had months to think. Her voice was steady, but I heard the pain beneath. That's my son. I raised him. I failed him somewhere, but I won't fail those boys. The room was quiet. Then I said, what do you need from me? Keep doing what you're doing. Press charges. Document everything. And come to the gala with me on Christmas Eve. Bring your lawyer if you'd like. I'll bring the bankruptcy records and a forensic accountant. We'll let the investors draw their own conclusions. She stood and extended her hand. I stood and shook it. Her grip was firm. Thank you, I said quietly. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get uglier before it gets better. After she left, I sat alone in the dim living room staring at the folder she'd left behind. For the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel like I was fighting alone. The next 2 days passed in careful, deliberate preparation. On the morning of December 22nd, Sarah came to my house. We sat at the kitchen table and spread out everything I'd been collecting for weeks. The financial summary showing $185,000 transferred over 18 months. The recording of Victoria admitting to identity theft. The emails from the HOA and Victoria's defamatory accusations. The APS caseworker's report clearing me of all concerns. And the thick folder Caroline had left Nathaniel's bankruptcy filing, forensic accounting reports, proof of $2.1 million in current debt. Sarah organized the documents into labeled folders and created a clear timeline. This is solid, she said finally. You're completely prepared. That afternoon, Caroline called. I spoke with Patricia Walsh, the boys' teacher at St. Jude's. She's willing to testify if we need her. She's been documenting concerns for months, Oliver and Theodore coming to school without proper supplies, wearing clothes that don't fit, asking for extra snacks. Victoria hasn't attended a single parent-teacher conference this year. I closed my eyes. Those poor boys. That's why we're doing this, Caroline said firmly. After we hung up, I pulled out a piece of stationery and wrote, Dear Oliver and Theodore, I want you to know that I love you both more than I can say. Whatever happens, none of this is your fault. You are good, kind, wonderful boys, and you deserve to be safe and loved. I will always be your grandmother. I will always be here for you. Love always, Grandma Eleanor. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into an envelope. On the evening of December 23rd, I pulled the black dress from my closet. I'd bought it years ago for a charity fundraiser Richard and I had attended. Simple, elegant, a knee-length sheath with 3/4 sleeves. I tried it on and stood in front of the bedroom mirror. It still fit. The last time I'd worn a dress like this, Richard had been beside me. That had been 12 years ago, a year before he passed. I remembered him adjusting his tie in the same mirror, making a joke about getting old. I felt the familiar ache of missing him. But beneath it, something else. Strength. Richard would have hated what Victoria had become, but he would have been proud of me for standing up to her. I packed a small bag, the evidence folders, my phone, fully charged Sarah's business card, water, tissues. Caroline called. I'll pick you up at 6 tomorrow evening. The gala starts at 7. I'll be ready. I set my alarm for 6 in the morning, Christmas Eve, and climbed into bed. Tomorrow, everything would change. The dashboard clock read 6:58 when Caroline's sedan turned into the long brick driveway. My stomach tightened as the mansion came into view. 3 stories of white stone and tall windows, every one of them glowing warm gold against the December night. Luxury cars lined both sides of the drive, a silver Bentley, 2 sleek Teslas, a midnight blue Porsche. "Ready?" Caroline asked softly. I looked down at my black clutch. Inside a USB drive holding everything we needed. My hands were trembling. "Ready," I said. We stepped out into the cold. The December air bit at my cheeks. I pulled my wool coat tighter. Caroline walked beside me, steady and elegant. The massive oak front door opened before we reached it. A young man in a black tuxedo gestured us inside. The entry hall took my breath away. A crystal chandelier the size of a dining table hung overhead, casting fractured light across white marble floors. Evergreen garlands wrapped the spiral staircase. White pillar candles flickered on every surface. A string quartet played softly in the corner. About 50 guests filled the space, all in formal attire. Women in silk gowns and diamonds, men in tailored tuxedos. I recognized a few faces from the country club attorneys' executives. They sipped champagne from crystal flutes and laughed in low, polished tones. Near the marble fireplace, I spotted a man in his early 50s with salt and pepper hair and sharp eyes, David Bennett, one of Nathaniel's creditors. He held a champagne glass and was deep in conversation with 2 men in dark suits. Then I saw her. Victoria stood near the grand staircase in a deep red silk gown. Diamond earrings caught the light. Her hair was swept into an elegant updo. She was laughing, her head thrown back, her smile wide and easy. Then she turned and saw me. The smile vanished. Her face went pale. She crossed the room in quick, sharp strides, heels clicking hard on the marble. "What are you doing here?" Her voice was low and tight with fury. I met her gaze, my voice calm. "I came to meet your new friends, Victoria." "You're not welcome here." Her voice rose slightly. A few guests nearby turned to look. Nathaniel appeared at her side, his jaw clenched. "Eleanor, you need to leave, now." Before I could respond, Caroline stepped forward. "Nathaniel." Her voice was ice. "Sit down." He froze, the color drained from his face. The room had gone quiet. The string quartet stopped mid-phrase. Guests turned, sensing something was about to happen. I raised my hand slightly, a small gesture, but it commanded attention. "Before anyone calls security," I said clearly, loud enough for every person in that room to hear, "I think you all deserve to know who actually paid for this party." The silence deepened. Every eye was on me now. Victoria's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Nathaniel took a half step back. David Bennett set his champagne glass down on the mantel, his sharp eyes fixed on me. I stood in the center of the room, my breath steady, my resolve firm. And I began to speak. "If you're still here with me, comment 8, so I know you're standing by my side. And tell me honestly, if you were in my place, would you walk into that party and expose everything, or stay silent to protect the family name? Write your answer below, because what happened next changed everything." A quick note before we continue: the next part of this story includes some dramatized elements added for storytelling and reflection. If it's not for you, you're free to stop here. My name is Eleanor Whitmore. My voice rang clear across the silent room. Every conversation stopped. Over the past 18 months, I have transferred a total of $185,000 to my daughter Victoria. The whispers started immediately, soft, shocked murmurs rippling through the crowd. What did she just say? 185,000. I continued, my voice steady. That money paid the mortgage on this house. It paid for my grandson's tuition at St. Jude's Academy. It paid for the Mercedes G-Wagon parked outside. It paid for the country club membership, and it paid for tonight's party. Victoria's face had gone from pale to flushed. Her hands were clenched at her sides. A man near the fireplace leaned toward his companion. Did she just say she's been funding everything? I took a breath. 2 weeks ago, my daughter told me I was a burden. She uninvited me from Christmas because I didn't fit the image she wanted to project. When I was in the hospital with a heart condition, she went to a luxury spa instead of visiting me. More whispers. A woman in a silver gown shook her head slowly. And when I stopped the financial support, I said, my voice growing firmer, Victoria committed identity theft. She opened a credit card in my name and stole $45,000. The room erupted. Gasps, exclamations. Several guests turned to stare at Victoria, expressions shifting from curiosity to shock. A woman near the fireplace covered her mouth. "Oh my God." David Bennett set his champagne glass down with a sharp clink, his eyes fixed on Nathaniel. Victoria's voice rose sharp and desperate. She stepped forward, hands shaking. "That money was mine. You owed me, Mother. You gave me nothing my whole life, and then when I finally built something, you ruined everything." Her voice cracked. Tears streamed down her face, not sorrow, but rage. I met her eyes, my voice calm. "I gave you everything, Victoria. $200,000 8 years ago. $185,000 over 18 months. I gave you my time, my love, my trust. You chose to waste it. You controlled me," she screamed. "You held it over my head." "I never asked for anything in return," I said quietly. "Not once." The room went silent again. This time the silence was horrified. Caroline stood. She moved with calm authority, walking across the marble floor and stopping in front of David Bennett. She held out a thick manila folder. "Mr. Bennett," she said, her voice steady and cold. "I believe you'll want to see this. It's my son's bankruptcy filing from 5 years ago." David opened the folder. His face went rigid. He flipped through the pages, his jaw tightening. Then he looked up at Nathaniel, his voice cutting like a blade. "Nathaniel, you owe me $400,000. You told me that debt was settled. You swore to me it was clean." Nathaniel said nothing. His face had drained of all color. He stared at the floor. Another man stepped forward, a silver-haired investor in a charcoal suit, face red with fury. "He owes me $300,000. Are you telling me he lied to all of us?" Caroline's voice cut through the rising chaos. "My son's current total debt is $2.1 million, most of it from gambling. He's been using Eleanor's money and yours to keep up appearances." The room exploded. $2.1 million. Gambling. "We need to pull out." Guests murmured loudly. A few pulled out their phones, texting lawyers. A woman near the back whispered urgently to her husband, and they turned toward the door. David Bennett closed the folder and set it down on the marble mantel with a sharp slap. "This partnership is over, Nathaniel. I'll see you in court." The silver-haired man nodded, face like stone. "Same here. My attorneys will be in touch." Nathaniel sank into a chair, his hands covering his face. He didn't speak. He didn't move. Victoria spun toward me, voice shaking with fury. "You've destroyed my life. You came here to humiliate me in front of everyone." I took one step closer, my voice low but firm. "I came here to tell the truth, Victoria. You destroyed your own life the moment you chose lies over honesty." She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, a loud mechanical horn blared from outside. Everyone turned toward the tall windows. Through the glass, we could see headlights bright and high and the unmistakable shape of a flatbed tow truck pulling into the circular drive. The horn sounded again, long and insistent. Guests moved toward the windows, craning their necks. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Is that a tow truck?" Victoria's face went white. Her hands dropped to her sides. "What is that?" I didn't answer. I simply stood there calm and still as the truck's engine rumbled louder. The front door opened. Cold December air rushed in, and a man's voice called from the doorway. "I'm looking for a Mercedes G-Wagon registered to Eleanor Whitmore." The man who stepped through the door was in his mid-50s, broad-shouldered, wearing a work jacket and steel-toed boots. He held a clipboard in one hand and a set of keys in the other. "I'm Marcus Johnson. I'm here to repossess a Mercedes G-Wagon license plate." He glanced at the clipboard and read off the number. Victoria's voice cracked. "No, that's my car." Marcus didn't flinch. "The lease contract is under Eleanor Whitmore's name. She canceled the payment authorization 2 weeks ago. The vehicle is legally hers until the lease transfers, which it hasn't." He held up the paperwork official, stamped undeniable. Victoria took a step toward him, her hands shaking. "You can't do this. Not in front of everyone." Marcus met her gaze, his expression unreadable. "Ma'am, I'm just doing my job." The guests had begun moving toward the door. Some stepped outside into the cold December night. Others crowded near the tall windows watching. Marcus walked past Victoria without another word. He crossed the driveway to the gleaming white Mercedes parked near the fountain. He pulled a spare key from his pocket, unlocked the door, and slid into the driver's seat. The engine purred to life. Slowly, carefully, Marcus drove the Mercedes up onto the flatbed of the tow truck. The mechanical whir of the winch filled the air as the vehicle was secured with heavy chains. A woman in a silver gown leaned toward Marcus as he climbed down from the truck. "Do you know Mrs. Whitmore?" Marcus paused, his face softened. "I do." "How?" He looked across the driveway, his gaze finding me where I stood near Caroline. 7 years ago, my wife Lisa was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. We didn't have insurance that covered the treatment she needed. We were about to lose everything. The crowd had gone quiet, listening. Mrs. Whitmore heard about it through a mutual friend. She showed up at the hospital one day and handed me a check for $200,000. She told me to take care of my wife and not to worry about paying her back. She never told anyone. She just gave. His voice wavered. Lisa lived another 2 years because of that treatment. 2 good years. Mrs. Whitmore gave me that time with my wife. I owe her everything. The guests turned to look at me. I saw respect in their eyes now, some of them nodding slowly, a few wiping at their eyes. Victoria stood frozen on the front steps, her face pale and hollow. Inside, through the open door, I could see Nathaniel sitting in a chair with his head buried in his hands. Then I heard small footsteps on the staircase. "Grandma," I turned. Oliver and Theodore appeared at the top of the grand staircase in their pajamas, their faces confused and frightened. The noise had brought them down. I crossed the threshold and knelt at the bottom of the stairs. "I'm here, boys." They ran down and wrapped their arms around me. Theodore buried his face in my shoulder. Oliver whispered, "What's happening?" "It's going to be okay," I murmured, holding them tightly. "I promise." Caroline touched my shoulder gently. "Eleanor, it's time." I kissed the tops of the boys' heads and stood. Marcus tipped his cap to me as he climbed into the cab of his truck. Caroline and I walked down the driveway together, past the luxury cars, past the flatbed, carrying the repossessed Mercedes, past the guests who parted silently to let us through. Behind us, Victoria sank onto the front steps. Nathaniel remained inside, motionless. We left them there in the wreckage of their own making. Christmas morning arrived cold and silent. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, my phone beside me. I didn't call Victoria. I didn't send a message. I simply waited and watched the consequences unfold from a distance. December 25th. Sarah called to inform me that the district attorney had filed criminal charges against Victoria Identity, theft, credit card fraud, and forgery. Nathaniel, meanwhile, was facing civil lawsuits from David Bennett and 3 other investors. His bank accounts had been frozen pending investigation. December 28th. A foreclosure notice was delivered to the mansion. The bank had scheduled an auction for January 18th. The house, the symbol of Victoria's carefully curated life, would be sold to the highest bidder. January 5th. Victoria's brand partnerships evaporated overnight. Her blog was taken down by the platform after multiple complaints. Nathaniel's professional license was suspended pending a review by the state board. He'd been accused of misrepresenting his financial status to clients' fraud by another name. January 10th, Caroline called. Oliver and Theodore had moved in with her temporarily. Victoria was allowed supervised visits twice a week, monitored by a court-appointed social worker. Caroline's voice was calm but tired. "The boys ask about you every day, Eleanor. They miss you." I closed my eyes. I miss them too. That same afternoon, I received an email from Sarah. Subject settlement offer from the DA's office. "Eleanor, you've won. Victoria is facing 2 to 5 years in prison if convicted. However, the prosecutor is willing to consider a settlement agreement if you're open to it. Given that you're the primary victim, your input will carry significant weight. Let me know how you'd like to proceed. Sarah." I read the email 3 times. 2 to 5 years. Prison. I thought about Oliver and Theodore, about their small voices asking where Grandma was, about the confusion and fear in their eyes that night at the gala, about the years ahead, years they'd spend visiting their mother behind glass or not visiting at all. I didn't want that for them. I didn't want Victoria in prison. I wanted her to understand what she'd done. I wanted her to face the consequences, yes, but I also wanted her to have a chance to rebuild, not for her sake, for theirs. I picked up my phone and called Sarah. "I don't want her in prison," I said. Sarah was quiet for a moment. "What do you want?" "I want her to repay the money, $185,000 over 10 years, zero interest. I want her to attend therapy, real therapy, not some weekend retreat. And I want her to prove she can hold down a stable job and take responsibility for her life." "That's generous, Eleanor." "It's not for her," I said quietly. "It's for the boys." Sarah drafted the settlement terms. Victoria would plead guilty to a reduced charge, avoid prison time, and enter a repayment plan with mandatory therapy and employment. If she violated any term, the original charges would be reinstated. I read the agreement twice, then signed my name at the bottom. I scanned it, attached it to an email, and sent it back to Sarah. Then I set my phone down and stared out the window. The winter sky was gray and heavy. I felt exhausted, bone-tired in a way I hadn't felt in years. But I also felt something else, relief. It was finally over, or so I thought. The courthouse auction room was cold and formal on the morning of January 18th. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. About a dozen people sat in folding chairs, investors mostly flipping through property listings with clinical detachment. At the front of the room stood the auctioneer, a gray-haired man in a navy suit, holding a gavel. I sat in the back row, my hands folded in my lap. No one recognized me. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "Next property, 428 Laurelwood Drive. 3-story residence, 5 bedrooms, 4 baths. Opening bid is $1.2 million, the outstanding mortgage balance." A man in the third row raised his paddle. 1.2. Another man across the aisle. 1.25. The first man again. 1.3. I watched the numbers climb. 1.35, 1.4. The bid slowed. The second investor hesitated, then shook his head and lowered his paddle. The auctioneer looked around the room. 1.4 million going once. I raised my hand. 1.5 million cash. Every head turned. The auctioneer blinked. 1.5 million cash. Do I hear 1.55? Silence. The first investor set his paddle down. The second shook his head. The auctioneer raised his gavel. 1.5 million going once. Going twice. He brought the gavel down with a sharp crack. Sold to bidder number 17, Eleanor Whitmore. I signed the paperwork that afternoon. The house was mine. 7 days later, on January 25th, I drove to 428 Laurelwood Drive for the first time as its owner. The circular driveway was empty now. No luxury cars, no hired valets. The evergreen garlands had been taken down. The windows were dark. I unlocked the front door with the key the bank had given me and stepped inside. The entry hall echoed. Most of the furniture was gone sold, I assumed, to cover debts. But there were still boxes stacked in the corners, half-packed and abandoned. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Victoria appeared at the landing, her face pale and drawn. She wore jeans and an old sweater. No makeup, no diamond earrings. She stopped when she saw me. "You bought it." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "You bought my house." I met her gaze evenly. "It's my house now, Victoria." Nathaniel emerged from the kitchen carrying a cardboard box. He set it down when he saw me, his expression wary. "Eleanor, we're packing. We'll be out by the end of the week." "You have 7 days," I said calmly. "That's what the eviction notice states. I expect you gone by February 1st. Victoria's voice cracked. "Where are we supposed to go?" "That's not my concern." I kept my tone steady, but not cruel. "You made your choices, Victoria. Now you live with them." Nathaniel took a step forward. "Please, Eleanor. We know we made mistakes. Just give us a little more time." "No." The word was final. "You had years of my time, years of my money. You squandered it. Now I will decide what happens to this house." I walked past them through the living room, up the staircase. I passed the boys' bedroom, still half-decorated with superhero posters and model airplanes. I saw framed photographs on the hallway wall, Oliver blowing out birthday candles. Theodore holding a soccer trophy, both of them smiling. I stopped in front of the photographs and touched the frame gently. This house, the symbol of everything Victoria had built on lies, would not be sold to strangers. It would not be torn down or forgotten. It would be a place my grandsons could return to. a place they could feel safe, a place that belonged to someone who loved them. I walked back downstairs. Victoria and Nathaniel stood frozen in the entry hall. 7 days, I repeated quietly. I stepped outside, locked the door behind me, and stood on the front steps holding the key in my hand. The weight of it felt like power and responsibility. Both were mine now. The family court hearing room was smaller than I'd expected, just a few rows of benches, a clerk's desk, and the judge's bench at the front. Pale winter light filtered through narrow windows. Caroline sat beside me in the front row, her hands folded, her expression calm but tense. Across the aisle, Victoria sat with Nathaniel and her attorney, a young woman in a gray suit. At 9 o'clock sharp, the bailiff called, "All rise." Judge Morrison entered, a man in his early 60s with gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a stern but measured expression. He took his seat and opened the file in front of him. "This is a petition for primary custody filed by Caroline Ashford, grandmother of minors, Oliver and Theodore Mercer. Ms. Ashford, your attorney may proceed." Caroline's attorney stood, a composed woman in her 40s. She presented the evidence methodically: Victoria's criminal charges for identity theft and fraud, the financial instability, the foreclosure. Then she called Patricia Walsh to testify remotely via video. Patricia appeared on the courtroom screen, calm, professional, heartbreaking. "I'm their teacher at St. Jude's Academy. Over the past 6 months, I noticed the boys often came to school without lunches. Their clothes were worn, sometimes unwashed. Oliver told me once that his mom was too busy to buy groceries. I documented every instance and reported it to the school counselor." Victoria's face crumpled. Her attorney whispered something to her. When it was her turn, Victoria's attorney stood. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges her mistakes. She is currently attending court-mandated therapy, actively seeking employment, and committed to rebuilding her relationship with her sons. She asks for joint custody with reasonable visitation." Judge Morrison listened without expression. Then he set down his pen. "I'd like to speak with the children, privately." Oliver and Theodore were brought in by a court-appointed child advocate. They looked small and nervous in their button-up shirts. The judge smiled gently at them and led them into his chambers. The door closed. 45 minutes passed. No one spoke. Victoria stared at her hands. Caroline sat perfectly still beside me. Finally, the door opened. The boys were escorted out by the advocate and taken to a waiting room. Judge Morrison returned to the bench. He looked at the file, then at the room. "I've reviewed the evidence and spoken with the children at length. It's clear that they love their mother and want to maintain a relationship with her. However, their safety and stability must come first." He paused. "Primary custody is awarded to Caroline Ashford. Victoria Mercer is granted supervised visitation twice per week to take place at Eleanor Whitmore's residence or another neutral location approved by this court. This arrangement will be reviewed in 6 months, at which time Miss Mercer may petition for increased visitation if she demonstrates consistent progress in therapy, stable employment, and financial responsibility." He brought his gavel down once. Court adjourned. Victoria's shoulders shook. She buried her face in her hands. Nathaniel put his arm around her, his own face pale and drawn. I looked across the room toward the waiting area where the boys sat. They couldn't hear the ruling yet, but they would soon. I felt a wave of relief so powerful it nearly brought tears to my eyes. Caroline stood and placed a hand on my shoulder. "Let's go." We walked out of the courthouse together into the cold February morning. Caroline stopped on the steps and turned to me, her eyes bright. "Thank you, Eleanor," she said quietly. "We saved them." I nodded, unable to speak. March arrived quietly. I didn't expect to see change in Victoria, not real change anyway. But slowly, carefully, it began to show. Sarah forwarded me updates from the court-appointed case manager. Victoria was attending therapy twice a week. She'd found a part-time job at a retail store making $15 an hour. It wasn't much, but it was honest work. The first supervised visit took place on March 8th at my house. Caroline brought the boys over at 2 in the afternoon. Victoria arrived 10 minutes later, alone. She knocked softly. When I opened the door, I barely recognized her. No makeup, no designer clothes, just jeans, a plain sweater, and running shoes. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her eyes were red-rimmed. "Hi, Mom," she said quietly. I stepped aside. "Come in!" She sat on the couch while Oliver and Theodore played with Legos on the floor. She didn't try to hug them right away. She just watched them, her hands folded in her lap. After a while, Oliver looked up. "Mom, are you okay?" Victoria's face crumpled for just a second before she pulled it back together. She nodded, her voice thick. "Mommy is trying, sweetie, I promise." I stayed in the kitchen watching from a distance. For the first time in years, I saw something I hadn't seen before: shame. And maybe, just maybe, sincerity. The third visit was on March 22nd. After the boys had been picked up by Caroline, Victoria hesitated near the door. "Mom," she said softly, "can I talk to you just for a minute?" I crossed my arms, but I nodded. "All right." She took a shaky breath. "I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know I can't take back what I did. But I need you to know I was wrong about everything. I lost myself somewhere along the way, and I hurt everyone who ever tried to help me." Her voice broke. "I don't know how to make this right. I didn't move closer. I didn't soften my expression. But I did speak. You can't fix it overnight, Victoria. You can't undo years of lies and manipulation with one apology. But you can start by being honest with yourself, with your sons, and with the people around you." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I'm trying. I swear I am." "Then keep trying," I said quietly. "Not for me, for them." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was the first real conversation we'd had in years. By early April, Nathaniel had found work as a restaurant manager, $40,000 a year, modest but stable. They'd rented a small apartment in the suburbs. Victoria's therapist reported steady progress. One afternoon, Caroline called. "Eleanor Oliver's birthday is coming up April 15th. I'm planning a small party at my house, just family. Victoria will be there if you agree." I thought about the past few weeks, the quiet visits, the apology, the slow, painful steps towards something that might someday resemble healing. "All right," I said, "she can come." The afternoon of April 15th was warm and bright. Caroline's backyard had been transformed. Blue and white balloons hung from the trees. A long table was set with paper plates and a large soccer-themed cake in the center, Oliver's favorite. A few of his classmates ran around the grass. Theodore stood near the cake, eyeing it with barely concealed anticipation. At 2:30, Victoria arrived. She walked slowly up the driveway carrying a small wrapped box. She wore jeans and a simple blouse. No heels, no jewelry. Her face was bare and nervous. Oliver spotted her immediately. "Mom!" He ran across the lawn and threw his arms around her waist. Victoria dropped to her knees and hugged him tightly, her eyes squeezed shut. "I wouldn't miss it, baby," she whispered. Theodore joined them quieter, but he leaned into her too. She wrapped an arm around him and held both boys for a long moment. I stood near the back porch watching. My throat tightened, but I didn't look away. This was what I'd fought for. Not perfection, just this two boys being held by their mother, feeling loved and safe. At 3 o'clock, we gathered around the table. Caroline lit 10 candles. We sang Happy Birthday slightly off-key, and Oliver grinned so wide his eyes nearly disappeared. "Make a wish, sweetheart," Caroline said. Oliver closed his eyes, then blew out the candles in one strong breath. "What did you wish for?" Theodore asked. Oliver looked around the table at his grandmother, at me, at his mother. "I wished we could all be together again, like a real family." The table went quiet. Victoria's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled through them. I reached across and squeezed Oliver's hand. "You are a family sweetheart. It just looks a little different now." After the cake was cut, Victoria approached me. She stood a few feet away, hands folded. "Eleanor," she said softly, "thank you for not giving up on them and for teaching me the lesson I needed to learn." I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman standing in front of me wasn't the same one who'd uninvited me to Christmas. She was smaller somehow, quieter, but maybe more real. "I never gave up on my family, Victoria," I said. "But I also will never let anyone take advantage of me again." She nodded slowly. "I understand." We stood there in silence. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. But there was something between us now, an understanding, fragile, but real. That evening, I drove home to the house on Laurelwood Drive. I'd spent the past month filling it with photographs of Oliver and Theodore. I sat on the couch in the quiet living room and opened my old journal. I turned to a blank page and wrote, April 15th. Today I learned that love doesn't mean accepting everything. Sometimes the greatest love is saying no. I lost $185,000, but I found myself again. And more importantly, I saved my grandsons from a life built on lies. That is worth more than any amount of money. I closed the journal and set it on the coffee table. Outside the window, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. For the first time in months, I felt peace. Real, quiet, lasting peace. Looking back now, I see the woman I was 18 months ago, the one who opened her bank account without hesitation, who believed that love meant saying yes to everything, who mistook enabling for supporting. I see her clearly, and I want to tell you, don't be like I was. This is one of those family drama stories that I never imagined I'd be living. You read about them, hear whispers at church, see them play out in other families, but you never think it will be yours. Yet here I am, a grandmother who lost $185,000 and nearly lost herself in the process. These grandma stories aren't supposed to end with police reports and custody battles. They're supposed to be about cookies and bedtime stories and unconditional love. But I learned something crucial. Unconditional love does not mean unconditional tolerance. The lesson I carry now is this: boundaries are not walls. They are bridges to healthier relationships. When I finally said no, I wasn't abandoning my daughter. I was refusing to participate in her destruction. I was choosing my grandson's future over her fantasy. And in doing so, I gave Victoria something she'd never had before: consequences. Real, unavoidable, life-changing consequences. If you find yourself funding someone else's life while they mock yours, if you're the safety net that's being used as a trampoline, if your generosity has become their entitlement, please, hear me stop. Not out of cruelty, but out of love. Love for them, yes, but also love for yourself. God teaches us to forgive, and I am trying. But forgiveness does not require me to hand over my credit card again. It does not mean erasing boundaries or pretending the past didn't happen. I believe the Lord gives us wisdom for a reason, and sometimes that wisdom sounds like a firm, loving no. These family drama stories teach us hard truths. Mine taught me that I had confused sacrifice with self-destruction. I had mistaken silence for peace, and I had believed that being a good mother and grandmother meant absorbing every blow without fighting back. I was wrong. Today, Oliver and Theodore are safe. They are loved. They are learning slowly, painfully, that grown-ups make mistakes that families can break and heal in new shapes. And that sometimes the people who love you most are the ones brave enough to say hard things. Victoria is trying. I see it. I don't trust it yet, but I see it. And that's enough for now. As for me, I am learning to live in the quiet. To sit in my living room, the one I bought back, the one filled with my grandson's laughter on weekends, and feel peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of clarity. If my story resonates with you, I hope it gives you permission to do what I should have done sooner: choose yourself. Not selfishly, not cruelly, but firmly, clearly, and without apology. Because grandma stories should be about legacy, and the legacy I'm leaving now is not money. It's the truth that real love sometimes wears the hard face of no. And that is worth more than $185,000. Thank you for walking with me to the end of this journey. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and tell me, what would you do if you found yourself in a situation like mine? Would you have cut off the support sooner? Or would you have kept hoping for change? Your perspective matters to me, and I read every single comment. If this story touched your heart or made you think twice about your own boundaries, please consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss future stories. There are so many more voices that need to be heard, and I'm honored you chose to spend your time with mine. A gentle note. While this story draws inspiration from real experiences and the challenges many families face, certain elements have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. These family drama stories and grandma stories are meant to spark reflection, conversation, and hopefully healing. If this type of content isn't for you, feel free to explore other videos that might resonate more with your interests. Thank you again. May you find the courage to love fiercely and the wisdom to know when love requires boundaries.